Hey, what's up? John Sonmez here from simpleprogrammer.com. So I wanted to talk to you about a subject today that is something that I think will help you a lot in your life if you can understand this, if you're willing to make the trade-off that it entails. It's something that's helped me a lot, something that I've been focusing on a lot in order to get better. I've hit some plateaus in some areas of my life, some areas of my personal development that I realized that the only way to get out of those plateaus was to do what I'm going to talk to you about, which is calibration. So what do I mean by calibration? So calibration is basically where you take some kind of behavior or some action and you go to different extremes with that behavior or that action. And through that process of going to different extremes, you figure out how to temper it and how to actually make it work for you, right? And so a lot of times in life, when you hit a plateau, when you hit some kind of plateau in perhaps in what you're doing, right? A lot of creative things. This would entail a lot of things with, which I've talked about a lot, overcoming fears, with dealing with things like developing your social skills. This is a big one. This is one that I was working on. And that if you understand this concept, it's going to help you a lot. So with calibration, here's the thing. So if you think about it this way, right? There's a lot of things in life that you've got opportunities, okay? And here's a big mistake that a lot of people make, I think, which is that when you get a certain opportunity in life, you feel like it's really important that you don't screw this up, right? Have you ever been in that? Have you ever had that feeling like I can't screw this up, okay? And so what you do when you try to not screw it up is a lot of times when you have that feeling, first of all, you do screw it up. And when you have that feeling, a lot of it comes from a lack of confidence because you're in a situation, you have an opportunity, you have something that you don't feel confidence in, and you don't have the skill level required to have that confidence. And so your behavior or your default thinking is, well, you know what, I better just try really hard and make sure that I don't screw this up. And and it seems like a good strategy, right? And you know, it's the default strategy that I think most people would take, but it's a horrible, bad strategy because what ends up happening when you do that is you may not screw it up, right? You may get a mediocre performance out of the thing, but you don't grow. Right? Because again, you know, I've talked about this a lot. I have a video on 5 soft skills every software developer should know where I gave this long talk, and it's all about you only grow when you go into your uncomfort zone, when you're willing to be uncomfortable. And so what ends up happening is that you may make it through that thing and you may get a mediocre result, but you don't get the main benefit out of that, which is the experience or the growth that comes from it. And so a lot of times the way that this manifests and plays out in your life is that you end up having to make this trade-off, right? And so this is what I'm going to tell you today is that sometimes and quite often it's worth throwing away a perfectly good opportunity just to gain information, right? Knowing that you're going to get other opportunities that come along, right? So there's a lot of times that you're going to be faced with having something that you don't want to screw up, and you're going to have a choice. You can either blow it up and find out, you know, what was wrong in order to get that calibration experience, or you can hang on, white knuckle it, and try to get through it, and maybe you do get through it, and maybe you screwed up anyway, but you don't learn anything. And so I've been focusing a lot in life in going to different extremes. And you can think of this as, you know, driving a car outside of your lane, right, in order to figure out where the barriers are, right? It's a very dangerous thing to do. It's probably not a good way to learn how to drive, but you're going to gain a lot of information by doing this with your life. So you have to make this trade-off, right, between going through these opportunities. And I'll give you an example for this as someone who does a lot of creative work, who does YouTube videos and has done you know, a lot of writing, right, and trying to find your voice. A lot of doing creative stuff involves finding your voice, right? In order to find your voice, I've talked about this I think at least once before, but in order to find your voice, what you have to do is you have to be willing to go to multiple extremes. You have to be willing to go to a very high extreme. So maybe you're going to try and write or act in such a way that's extremely trying to be funny or sarcastic. Or maybe you're going to say fuck a lot, right? Maybe you're going to up the amperage where you really are going beyond the threshold of what you should do in order to temper it down. Or maybe you're going to go the opposite way and you're going to be really calm and really zen-like, right? And the same thing would apply with social interactions with people, right? I'll tell you again, for you guys out there with calibrating, with dealing with the opposite sex, right? Having conversations or progressing with someone of the opposite sex that you're trying to attract. And and a lot of times you're going to want to hold on to it, and you're going to want to not mess this up, but it might be worth it to mess up a few things, right? To mess up a few relationships, to mess up a few videos that you do, a few blog posts that you write, a few whatever it is, in order to figure out where your calibration is, right? Because when you blow something up really badly, it can sometimes help you to figure out, when you examine that, it can show you where the extremes are. And sometimes what you'll find when you do this is that you can go way further than you thought that was possible or that you thought was advisable, and you're still in the safety zone, right? You're still in a good place, and you can get extremely good results. So you can do things in life that seem really bad, really like a bad idea, right? And really extreme, but that extreme is actually not an extreme. It was just an extreme. It was just a limiting belief that you had that was a barrier for you. So I'll give you a good example. For a lot of you that have social anxiety, and you feel like you don't have good people skills or social dynamics, right? You can't talk to people, is that one thing you can try and do is being overly talkative and gregarious, right? And just like, try for example, like here's a good example, right? When you meet someone, instead of just shaking their hand, you just like come at them and you say, "Hey, how's it going? Man, it is good to see you." And you grab their hand and you shake their hand and you give them a hug, and you just come at them with a huge amount of energy, okay? And it's kind of funny because I actually did this experiment at a couple of conferences I was at, because they actually had us do this, and you expect that to be like ridiculous, that people are going to react to that in a negative way. But almost always, right, this is really pushing a boundary, but almost always what happens is the other person is just so damn happy that you are greeting them in such a manner, right? I'm not saying that you can't overdo it, but what you think might be overdoing it might not be, right? And so there's a lot of ways in life where you can do this, and you can find out where that actual boundary or where that line is. So, and the only way sometimes to know where it is to cross it. So sometimes when you're at a plateau, it's a good idea, a good strategy in life to say, okay, there's this thing, right? Maybe it's an opportunity, maybe it's a business opportunity, right? Or a job opportunity, or a relationship opportunity, and you say that, I'm willing to trade this for experience. I'm willing to blow this fucker up, right? I'm willing to blow this up just in order to learn from the experience, because that's going to be more valuable, because there's going to be more experiences that are going to come along. There's more fish in the sea, however you want to say it, but the learning, right? The learning opportunity is going to be worth sacrificing some of the reserve that you have, some of the opportunities, right? And this is a really, really hard thing to do. It's really, really hard, especially when opportunities come that you've been waiting for, to have the mindset to realize that there's going to be more opportunities. And example, I'm trying to think of a real good way to give you an analogy here, but let's suppose that you have, there's actually a psychological experiment that's kind of based around this. I can't remember the exact terms of it, but let's say that you have 50 tries at doing something in your life, right? And so, in those 50 tries, one strategy that most people take would be to take the safe choice on all 50 of those, and to try and get like a mediocre result, and then figure that over 50 times getting that mediocre result will add up and it'll be worth it, right? But that seems like a good strategy, right? It seems reasonable, especially when you don't know that you have got 50 opportunities that are going to come up in your life. But instead of doing that, what you can do is, what's a better strategy, but a harder one to do, is to say, well, I'm going to take the first 5, and I'm not going to care about the outcome or the result of those first 5. I'm just going to fucking play it as hard as I can. I'm going to push the boundaries as hard as I can, right? I'm going to make, if those of you are inspiring to make YouTube videos and whatnot, I'm going to make some ridiculous videos. I'm going to go extreme. I'm going to go wild with my character and how I'm presenting myself on video. Or I'm going to go real deep. I'm really going to put my heart into this and say some embarrassing shit. Okay, I've said some embarrassing shit on videos before, okay? And knowing that you're probably going to bomb and blow those things up, right? And I think, here's a good example. It's actually stand-up comics go through this a lot, right? one of my buddies, one of my good buddies, was talking to me about Chris Rock and how, he's not naturally funny, right? And he was talking about how, and I think I heard this also from So Good They Can't Ignore You, from what's his name? Gosh, I can't think of the comic, the one from Naked Gun now. Anyway, because he had made that statement, and essentially what it is that a lot of stand-up comics, what they do is, you see them and they're so funny when you see them live. You see them on, an HBO exclusive or whatever, their HBO series, and you think they're really funny, they're really talented. But what they've actually done is that they've gone to all these smaller comedy clubs and they've pushed the boundaries. They've tried new material that they don't know is going to work, that they probably think is going to fall flat, and they've really pushed the boundary, and they're willing to look like a real big fucking idiot in front of these crowds of people, even though they've got a reputation, even though they've got a name, in order to calibrate their material in order to make it better, right? And so they're going to actually blow those opportunities purposely. They're purposely going to blow themselves up, almost purposely sabotage themselves in order to get better, because they realize that calibration is more valuable than having a good performance every single time, right? They'd rather have some phenomenal performances in their life and to develop their skill in general than to have decent performances every single time, right? It's almost like it's swinging for the fences, right? Every once in a while, you gotta swing for the fences, right? Because if you're just taking bunts, right? I mean, you can walk through your whole life taking bunts, right? And most people do. Most people fucking bunt the whole time when they need to be swinging for the fences. And when you do that, when you do decide that you're going to swing for the fence, you fucking strike out. You miss. You miss. You whiff, right? Until that one time that you crack the ball and it goes home run, right? And so, but if you're willing to do that and you're willing to whiff so many times and you're willing to swing for the fences, then you're going to eventually develop the skill, that calibration of being able to swing hard and still hit the ball, right? Do you see what I'm saying? So I think that's probably the best analogy I can give you. And I'll talk more about this subject in the future, as this is something I've been working on, as I found that, in order to get to a certain skill level and certain things, you don't necessarily have to do this, right? You can gain the skill level just by gaining experience, but in order to really excel, you've got to swing for the fences. And when you swing for the fences, you're going to strike out a lot. And so it's almost like, another example would be Tiger Woods rebuilding his golf swing from the ground up. Even though he was really good, even though he was already a PGA superstar, he went and he was willing to suck for a period of time in order to rebuild his golf swing in order to get to the next level. And that's what calibration is. Calibration is doing that. It's being willing to trade some benefit now, right? And being willing to look like an idiot, being willing to blow things up, to lose opportunities that you really want to work out, in order to gain the experience that's going to let the future opportunities that you have in your life become more successful, because you grow more, right? And so, and that's the concept. And you can apply this to a lot of areas of your life. Like I said, if you hit an area where you have a plateau, you might want to examine, and you might want to say, hey, is this a place where I'm not swinging very hard? I'm not swinging for the fences. I'm playing it safe, right? And I could actually, in the tech world, I think Apple is doing this now. I think Apple is not innovating very much, right? Because they're afraid, because they have something that's really successful, their products, especially the iPhone, and so they're afraid to now swing for the fences anymore because they're already making so much money. So, and this happens a lot. Like I said, when you taste success, you don't want to suck again, right? And I've had to do this. I have to rebuild my golf swing in many areas of my life. But when you do it and you come out the other side, it's worth it, but it costs you something up front. So my question to you would essentially be this. Are you bunting? Are you bunting throughout life? Are there areas in your life where you're bunting, where you need to just take a big fucking risk and you need to find out where the boundaries are, right? So if that's the case, then you know what to do. You got to start doing that. So, all right, just something to think about as I've been, like I said, working through this myself and seeing huge benefits from doing this, like pushing my limits way beyond in certain areas of my life, and finding out that, sometimes it blows up. And it's hard. It's hard because you're like, oh, fuck, I really screwed that up. But then also finding out that, wow, even though I really screwed that up, I got so much growth from it. And that growth is going to benefit me in the next opportunity that comes along. So There you go. That's all I got for you today. If you like this video, make sure you click the subscribe button below and make sure that you take at least a couple of swings for the fences, if only just to gain that experience and figure out where that calibration point is. I'll talk to you next time. Take care.